Escape Pod. Episode 742. Summer Flashback. Them Ships. By Sylvia Moreno Garcia.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Summer School. This summer on Escape Pod, we're taking the opportunity to use Flashback Fridays to explore some of the ways science fiction plays with its biggest concepts. Now, over at Pseudopod, my usual beat, one of the subgenres I love the most is stories about what happens after the world ends. Because once that comforting superstructure of personal and total catastrophe is blown away, you realise two things. Firstly, it was, in many cases, oddly comforting. Secondly, you're alone. And you're still here. Thematically, that's kind of where this week's story begins. So, without further ado, it's story time.
Them Ships by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Leonardo says that the Americans are going to fire some rockets and free us from the tyranny of the aliens, and I say, who gives a shit? Let me tell you something. It wasn't super awesome around here before the aliens. At least we get 3 meals every day now. I used to live in a cardboard box with a tin roof and collected garbage for a living. They called my home a lost city, but they should have called it fucked city. Leonardo talks about regaining our freedom, about fighting and shit. What damn freedom? You think I had freedom in the slums? Leonardo can talk freedom out his ass because he had money before this thing started, and he saw too many American movies where they kill the monsters with big guns. I'm not an idiot. The cops used to do their little operations in our neighborhood. They come in and arrest everyone, take everything. They weren't Hollywood heroes out to help people. They were fucking assholes, and I don't see why they would have changed. As for American soldiers saving the day, you think they give a rat's ass about Mexico City? You think they're going to fly here in their helicopters and save us? I say fuck that shit. I never had no freedom. Leonardo can go piss himself. Leonardo's been going on about Freedom Fridays again, which means I've been putting on the headphones and listening to my music. The good thing is the aliens let me charge the player. Otherwise I'd kill that little shit. Well, he ain't that little. Leonardo is pretty tall, probably because he didn't have to eat no garbage when he was growing up. His dad had some sort of fast food franchise, and Leonardo was doing really well, studying at the tech, fucking pretty girls, and driving a fancy car till the aliens landed and started rounding people up in sectors. And since the aliens don't classify by social status, Leonardo got put in with me. I'm not sure if he was more dismayed about being a prisoner or about having to share a room with the likes of me. I'd say me. I don't really care. Our home was a 1-bedroom, which I shared with my 3 sisters and my parents. Sharing with one person is easy, and it's even easier when that person doesn't reek of alcohol-laced coffees like my dad did. The asshole's probably dead, and I'm fucking glad for it, and I'm also glad now I only share my room with Leonardo. Got my own bed now, my own desk. I don't write much, except for them diaries entries because the aliens say it's healthy. Leonardo's complaining that they're trying to break our spirits again, and I tell him to go fuck himself. The first time I saw the spaceship, I was walking down the ravine picking garbage. 'Cause that's what I did every day. Get my bags and strap them and go pick around. There's some good shit you could find in the garbage, like my music player. So there I am looking for soda cans and plastic bottles I can drag to the recycling center or a juicy find I can sell. And it gets dark, like a cloud passed over the sun. I don't look up at first because I'm busy, but then there's this weird noise, so I raise my head and I see it. It's like a flying jellyfish, even though I've never seen a jellyfish in real life. Just pictures in a magazine. Well, this is kind of like that, except real big. It ripples with lots of colors, and I'm not even sure I know all the colors. It's hovering there in the sky, all shiny, and it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And I think if they've come to kill us, it's all right, because at least they've given us something beautiful. The truth is I cry, because it's so pretty. Leonardo has nice hair and he fidgets in front of the small mirror. I don't really care what I look like. I wouldn't have even clipped my nails if he hadn't insisted they looked gross. Gross? When we met, I've already had a shower and been disinfected. Imagine if he had met me before when I lived in the slums. Of course, he would have never met me. That's what pisses me off about Leonardo. He acts like we are totally partners, should totally engineer some great escape together, but he would have never even looked at me if we bumped into each other on the street. A piece of bubble gum stuck to his shoe would have been more appealing than me. Now we're supposed to be friends. Now we should get along because we are both slaves. See, I don't know where he gets that shit about slaves. The aliens say specialized personnel, and I do feel like personnel. I don't feel like a slave because they ain't having us do hard labor. They ain't whipping us or chaining us or starving us. Yeah, maybe it is a bit like prison, but I get 3 meals a day. There's fresh vegetables and meat. There's a nice bed, and there's the uniform with my red jacket. I happen to like the uniform. It's the first piece of clothing that fits me. I used to wear my sister's hand-me-downs. I was the youngest, so I got the short end of the stick. Holes in my underwear and rips in my trousers. This uniform is brand new and it fits me. Why does he have to be such a downer? Leonardo is smarter than me, but sometimes he is stupid. I didn't finish secondary school, but for all his big words and knowledge of books, sometimes he acts like he's a little kid. He doesn't like me learning the aliens' language. But the thing is, I'm good at it. I've never been good at anything except picking garbage, and that barely counts. But I'm good at learning what they say. I pick it up real fast. Leonardo was a linguistics student, and he can't even do as well as I can. I'm proud of that. I can do stuff. Leonardo sours it by saying I'm a Malinche. I didn't finish secondary school, but I know what he means. So I say, fuck you. How does he get off on saying that? And how does he know what it was like for La Malinche? They sold her off to the Spaniards and she worked for them. What was she supposed to do? Spit in their face? You get into a crappy situation and you cope. So she coped. I don't see why we've got to be all insulted when a woman tries to survive. Yeah, I want to learn to speak what the aliens speak. I want to translate for them. 'Cause it's the smart thing to do. Leonardo looks at me and disapproves. Leonardo is a fool. When we eat in the big hall, Leonardo wants to sit next to Fabiola and Mario. I don't like them. They're always whispering and complaining about the aliens. I know they also whisper about me. Leonardo says they're nice people, but they're not. Mario called me Cholo one time, 'cause I have the tattoo on my arm, and another time bitch, because he's a scared dickless shit. If I was back in the ravine, I would slice the smug smile off his face with a glass bottle. I'm here, so I can't do squat. The aliens don't like us fighting. Today they were sitting together and whispering again. I put on my headphones and listened to my music until they were done. Then we came back to the room, and Leonardo was all weird. Something they said must upset him, 'cause he wouldn't tell me what. Fine. It's not like it matters. Sometimes I like Leonardo, like when he explains big words to me like hyperbole and paradoxal. He doesn't explain like he's smug, and that's good because I don't like people making fun of me. They make fun of me, Fabiola and Mario. I got funny music in my player, they say. I tell them to eat shit. Leonardo just lays it real clear, and he knows I get it. He ain't got to explain 10 times before I understand. I'm real good at languages, and I remember words. He looks a bit surprised when I can remember some stuff real quick, but I tell him I've always been a quick learner. He says I could have done well in school if I finished. He asks me if I wanted to study anything. What would I have studied? I asked him. All the women round were maids or picked garbage. My dad was a scavenger. I was one too. Sort glass from wood, sort paper from plastic, while aggressive flies buzz round your face and stray dogs wag their tails. I told him my biggest dream was to go to California. He asked why I wanted to move so far away. I told him I meant the restaurant with the buffet. And he smiled, and I felt stupid for telling him that. I didn't understand Leonardo's books when we first started sharing a room. It seemed so stupid to hang on to those. They were not even fun books, but the textbooks he'd been carrying in his backpack when he was hauled off by the aliens. But now I guess I kind of see the point. The books are like the music to me. They click in your head like a big puzzle piece and make you whole. Leonardo doesn't like my music, but he sat down next to me on the bed and we've listened to the same song. For kicks. To starve off the boredom because you can't study the alien language all day long and there are those patches in the day that must be filled. This feels normal. I've never done normal. It's kind of fun. Leonardo told me the aliens conduct experiments and we are like mice. I told him that's as idiotic as the people who say aliens eat people, 'cause they don't. He says they're parasitical and some of them are going to live inside us. I ask him how something as big as the aliens, 'cause they're real tall, real pale, can live inside you. But he says they can. He watched too many cartoons when he was a kid. I now have access to some of the alien databanks, and there, in our conversations, it's pretty obvious it's not like that. We're too coarse, too violent, too stupid, and they're going to help us. I suppose some people would prefer to think they'll cook us for supper. That would be easier to understand. This, well, it's harder to stomach. Not that I can't stomach it. Alien cops, space cops, whatever you want to call it, they ain't no different from regular cops. You just got to talk the right way, act the right way, think the right way, bribe here and there, and we're all friends. We're a nice, happy family. It's kind of funny that Leonardo doesn't get it. Seems simple to me. Leonardo's been nicer and quieter lately. That's good. When he's nervous, he makes me nervous. Pisses me off. He's all mellow today, laying on the bed and reading his books. He even asks me how the language is going, and I tell him it's real good. I'm going to be a translator. Maybe one day I'll be a section supervisor. He nods and stares at me. He asks me if I miss my family. I miss my sisters. I don't miss my parents. He asks me, what if they're dead? I tell him if my parents are dead, they got what was coming for them. My sisters, they didn't do nothing, but bad stuff happens to good people. Happens all the time, and good people bite a bullet just 'cause it's the way it is. He tells me he misses his parents. He has a girlfriend. He doesn't know where she is now. I tell him not to think about it. It'll twist you inside. He says I'm brave. I laugh at that. There's no windows in our room, the cell, Leonardo says, but there's windows in the dining hall. While Leonardo, Fabiola, and Mario whisper, I splay my fingers against the glass and look at the sky. The jellyfish ships swim in the sky, so pretty against the sinking sun. I want to be on them ships. I want to be on board. I hope I make it. Leonardo gets scared sometimes at nights. He dreams they're coming for him again, taking him from his school, taking everyone. I lay down next to him and I pat his head. Yeah, it's done, I say. Yeah, it's over. He wants to know what I did when they came for me. I shrug. I tell him there were raids all the time where I lived. At first I thought it was just cops. Then I saw it wasn't cops, and frankly, it didn't matter. He wants to know what I dream about. I tell him I don't dream much. He looks all sad and plants a kiss on my cheek. I let him. I didn't let the other boys, but I let him. Leonardo thinks we can escape. He's talked about it with Mario and Fabiola. I tell him there's no way, and he insists on it. Resistance. Fight. Blah, blah. I put on my headphones and listen to my music. He comes over, all plaintive, and puts a hand on my knee. Don't I want to go with him? I like it here. But he's springing out of here one way or another with Mario and Fabiola. What's the catch, I want to know. Catch is I've got access to the main terminal. Catch is he needs some info. Catch is this smells like being used. I roll over and stare at the wall. I get him the info anyway. I know he's going to betray me, but it still stings when it happens. He does spring out, but just with Fabiola and Mario. They don't bother taking me with them. It's okay because they're caught 2 days later and brought back. I see them being dragged across the patio in chains. Leonardo's got a wild look in his eyes. He catches sight of me standing with my alien advisor by a window. He yells. He asks me to convince them that they've made a mistake. Mercy. Intercede. My advisor glances down at me. I know how to say this, of course, but sticking up for a runaway won't look good. I know it'll go in my file. I won't be able to fly in one of the pretty ships. Maybe they'll even say I was an accomplice, and I was, it would be true, and punish me too. There's one of them ships going by, iridescent. Leonardo taught me that word. It blocks the sun like a great whale, then shifts and slips away. Sometimes there are no words in any language to construct the proper sentence. I remain quiet as he's dragged away. I'm brave? I don't know. It's called surviving. I turn on the music player.
When I was a plaid shirt wearing teen, wandering around the Isle of Man waiting to get a chance to start my own pirate radio station, oddly enough the teen classic Pump Up the Volume hit me where I lived. In it, Christian Slater plays a shy loner, yeah, I know, who by night is transformed into a profanity-slinging truth yeller, uniting the kids behind his banner of total horrific self-awareness and dick jokes. It's a good movie, arguably one of Slater's all-time greats, and it captures the clenched, shrieking horror of living in a small town with clear eyes and an only slightly maniacal grin. Of course, these days, he'd be a shock jock who was at best alt-right adjacent with Joe Rogan posters all over his walls, and that, oddly enough, is where Pump Up the Volume and this story collide. Well, one of the two places. The other is Concrete Blonde's cover of Leonard Cohen's Everybody Knows, both of which feature in the movie, if I remember correctly, and both of which feature this line. Everybody knows that the war is over. Everybody knows that the good guys lost. I had that on notebooks. Also, Detective John Munch's speech about how if you play a country and western song backwards, you get your job, your house, and your wife back. I was a fun kid. I was delightful. But that line, the Cohen, not the Munch, is what perfectly embodies this story for me, as well as the moral ambiguity that, like I say, the main character in Pump Up the Volume would undoubtedly occupy these days. This is another, slightly more literal, run at alien invasion, but where Women of Our Occupation shows us what it looks like from the outside, this is a story that shows us what it looks like from the inside. Garcia and Hurley are complementarily brave authors, each daring to show us the humanity reflected in the polished visor of the oppressor, or in this case, in the mirror of their quarters at the oppressor's base of operations. Everybody knows the war is over. Everybody knows that the good guys lost. But to misquote my favourite God of Thunder, did they though? What if the good guys are the people who tear your family apart? Or who endlessly discriminate against you with the banal hatred of a system of governance that is ultimately only concerned with those who fund it? What if the good guys don't care? What if that's why, in the end, they lost? I love what this story denies us, the way Garcia zeroes in on this one aspect of a massive event. I love the rage that runs through the lead character and how, a tool that fits her hand in place for the first time, she knows full well what she's doing. Most of all, I love that the alien ships are beautiful, that art, grace, beauty is something so absent from the world that it becomes an alien concept in and of itself, and pushing through to the other side of that, it could be read as a law, a trap. An anglerfish a solar system wide encouraging us into its maw, not realizing that for so many of us, that's a better deal. Moral ambiguity is too often in fiction an excuse for performative atrocity. I've been blessed twice this week to interact with fiction that explores true moral ambiguity. The first is Matt Wallace's extraordinary new novel, Savage Legion, which turns epic fantasy on its head and pile drives it into the centre of the earth to forge it into something new and better. This story is the second, and it does the same thing in a quieter, more personal, but if anything, angrier way. This is a story for me, in the end, about agency. Being on the other side of the wall from the protagonist and Women of Our Occupation means from that side, the side where traditionally characters and readers sit, this is a story about a villain. From this side, it's a story about a survivor, and someone who views the grey area between right and wrong less like a minefield and more like an area that, at last, they have a map to navigate across. The Ending of a Traveller, the new Twilight Zone episode, written by Glenn Morgan and directed by Anna Lily Amirpour, explores this same idea through the prism of a man in a cell in a police station in the middle of nowhere. It's impressive, but it lacks the closed fists and clear eyes of this story. A story that, in the end, gives us two questions. What if aliens have a better plan for us than we do? And Where's the line between survival and villainy? And perhaps just maybe a third. In this situation, does it matter? Or to put it another way, does anybody know anything at all? And does that matter? This is space, the largest and most nebulous of concepts, rendered down to the intensely personal. This is space not as final frontier, but as first step, an apocalyptic wave of change that becomes not a disaster, but an opportunity for reparation, for justice, for a chance to live. The aliens are here, and they've brought healthcare. It sits beautifully with the wild frontier of repo, the cold yet familiar nature of women of our occupation, and the nervy, febrile ecology of nightmare lights of Mars. Working backwards, that's space as danger, space as societal lens, space as the least romantic version of the Old West imaginable, and here, space as space. To live, to grow, to do what was always denied. Whether the cost is too high, in this instance, absolutely depends on where you're standing. This is science fiction as ethical microscope and character study, and I love it. Thanks to all. We're working on paying our associate editors at the moment, via fundraising through Patreon and PayPal. These people are the first point of contact for every author and every magazine, and slowly and surely there is a movement building across our industry to pay them. We want to be part of that movement, and can be with your help. For $5 a month, you get access to our vault, full of audio delights. For more, you get access to surveys, merch, the whole bit. For $5 a month at Pseudopod via PayPal, it's the vault. Either option works for us, both are needed. Please help out if you can, and if not with money, perhaps with time. Help us raise our profile by leaving a review, Apple Podcasts, Google, or wherever you get your podcasts. Tweet a link to an episode, write a blog, trust me, it all helps. And on behalf of all of us, thank you. And on behalf of all of us, if there is something that we can do to help you raise our profile, please get in touch. Ben will be your guide to the Flash Vaults next week, and then the week following I'm back for the final month of summer school, starting with Immersion by Aliette de Bodard, originally published by us in 2013. Then, as now, we will be a production of Escape Artists Inc. and released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives license. And I leave you with this quote from GLaDOS via Still Alive by Jonathan Coulton. We do what we must, because we can. See you in 2 weeks, folks. Until then, have fun.